This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
By popular demand, Place to Be Nation Wrestling returns to the Dirty South for Talkin' WCW, an episodic wrestler showcase designed to educate, evaluate, and entertain, with matches spanning the intimate stage of Techwood Studios to the heights of Space Mountain. Talkin' WCW presents the best, worst, and most surreal offerings from World Championship Wrestling. So cast your gaze to the Turnertron with hosts Jennifer Smith, Tim Capel, and Greg Phillips.
Hi, welcome to Talkin' WCW. My name is Jennifer Smith. I'm here with the Triple H to my Vince McMahon, Tim Capel. How you doing, Tim?
Ooh, wow. Not a great time of year to be Vince McMahon, is it? But I'm glad that you jumped in front of that bullet.
Yeah, well, I'll do what I can.
I mean, heart attacks and supposed retirements and all. I'll take the Triple H heat tonight. Yep. But we've got our third power. I guess I could say Nick Khan, but let's not be sexist here. That's standing in for Stephanie McMahon in our third seat is going to be Greg Phillips with us as always. Greg,
I'll take it. I feel like I just grew about.
How are you, my
in
lovely
height.
bride?
It's our marriage is just as happy today as it was 20 years ago when we first met, and I feel much taller suddenly. I feel like I've got a power suit forming around me. It's great.
Oh yeah.
You turned super hot, I will say. Yeah,
I am pretty hot. I always say that about myself.
Irresistible.
Just stare in the mirror. I would if I was her.
Well, yeah, but
is that weird?
I mean, listen, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff had a little mirror in his locker room that he would stare at all times and tell himself that he was Mr. Wonderful. That he was Mr. Wonderful. I'm Mr. Wonderful. I am Mr. Wonderful. So if he can do it, so can I.
I agree.
If Gary Spivey of the Psychic Friends Network can do it, so can I. Gary Spivey.
If Eddie Gilbert can call himself Hot Stuff while he struts through the ring.
Oh, do I have some Eddie Gilbert information for this podcast?
We need to get into that.
On that note.
Yeah. So whose pick was this? Tim's?
This was the great Greg Phillips's pick. Yeah. This was the great Greg Phillips's pick for our subject matter today. And
it is I had stuff Eddie Gilbert.
Oh shit.
No, I picked this subject today, which is the Great Muta, the Japanese, the Pearl of the Orient, the Japanese superstar, the Great Muta. And I selected him because he is embarking upon what is purported to be his retirement tour. He's supposed to be retiring from wrestling next year, and he's in the midst of starting his march to retirement. And so I thought, what better time to celebrate, I think, unquestionably, WCW's most popular and successful Japanese wrestler. Would that be fair to say?
Wow. Yeah, I guess it is fair to say. Remember when people were calling for him to retire in like 1999?
Yes, because he had no knees.
He had no knees. I guess he's found
people
some
call
knees.
For other people to retire? That seems weird.
Well, I mean, wrestling fans do, Jenny.
But where do they call it to? Like on the internet?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They're not afraid.
The internet.
They'll go to the papers if they have to.
It's like, right. That Muta should retire. Like, what?
Yeah. No, the internet was quite outspoken even in 1999, believe it or not. It's just changed forums over the years. Yes, perhaps even more so. But it's just changed avenue over the ensuing 30 years. But nonetheless, 20 years, not 30. God, how old am I?
I mean, I'll get there.
Yes, so Muta has engaged in quite a few career revivals since then. He shaved his head and went by his real name, Keiji Muto, and had a nice little run there in, I believe, All Japan Pro Wrestling. He's had a long and storied career, but he first made an impact on an international level, major international impact in WCW, in the NWA, if you will, as the protege of one Gary Hart, who we haven't ever talked about on this show, I don't think, because he's only around on TBS for a little while during that era, but he made quite an impact while he was there.
Yeah, and this is going to be in 1989 here. You get Gary Hart hooked up with Muta. Going to be the early goings here of what's going to be known as the JTEX Corporation, right? With
Yes.
You also get the Dragon Master. Yes, the Dragon Master, and Terry Funk is in there for a minute. You get Buzz Sawyer,
Dick Slater briefly.
Yeah, Dick Slater when you need a Terry Funk cosplayer. So you get, some Texas guys and some Japanese guys, and there you go.
Put them together, and there you have it. Yeah.
JTEX. Well, it wasn't the idea that Ric Flair or James J. Dillon sold the Horsemen to
Hiro Matsuda. Yes.
Yes, Hiro Matsuda, the evil Japanese.
Yes, JR referred to as that evil man, even though he had not done anything to that point to demonstrate being evil. Right.
The true evil, JR, is capitalism. Ever thought about that, pal? This was 1989 WCW in a nutshell, and Muta comes in, and the match that you picked, Greg, is going to be, is this his first match, at least on pay-per-view? But had he done anything on TV prior to this?
Yeah, he had made his debut before this. So he came in doing squash matches, and he had this incredible look that nobody had ever seen before. He wore this elaborate mask to the ring with this robe, and he took off the mask, and he had the painted face underneath, and he sprayed the mist. But his first major appearance was at the Clash earlier that year, where he debuted against a guy named Scott Casey and beat him in a squash match. And he had done several TV squashes because they talk on commentary during this match about him being undefeated. An undefeated wrestler who was challenging, and I guess that's as good a time as any to introduce what this match is. My selection for our Great Muta episode was his first major pay-per-view match, which is challenging Sting at Great American Bash 1989 for the World Television Wrestling Championship of Wrestling.
Yeah.
And
you can say belt now. We can say that again. Yeah.
No, it's a belt holds up Sting's pants. It's a championship title, which is also a belt. And anyway, yeah. So that's the match here. This was the first big giant test, if you will, for the Great Muta, and really Sting's first big test as TV champion, because he had defended against the Iron Sheik, I think, at Wrestle War or something like that, and Mike Rotunda and guys like that. So this was two exciting, hot, young wrestlers battling at a time when either one of them could have believably won the match. So it was pretty exciting at the time. And as a little 5-year-old Stinger, I was certainly very excited about this match because I didn't know how anyone could beat the Great Muta because he had all these cool moves, and could Sting overcome him? We'd have to see. But before the match starts, we get a little pre-match promo because as we mentioned, the Great Muta's manager is Gary Hart. And Gary Hart is a very nefarious, bald, evil man who is satanic looking. He talks like he's from the inner city of Chicago, and he's just a very dangerous man, and he's up to no good. So Sting needs somebody to counter him, and naturally, to counter Gary Hart, Sting has the guy that broke him into the Mid-South territory, the man known as Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, coming down to be Sting's second. And Sting does a little promo before the match with Gordon Soley, and he's fired up. Let me say, first of all, before we get into the heart of this thing, I did not like this face paint on Sting. I didn't like the scorpion on the forehead. It was off-putting. I kept thinking it was an actual scorpion. And it's like, well, that's what's he doing? And then, of course, it's not a real scorpion, but I just don't like the look of it. I like Sting's regular face paint.
Yeah.
So that pissed me off. And he does the promo and he just says, I'm excited about wrestling this great challenge of Muta or whatever. He walks off. Then Eddie Gilbert steps in. And I wanted to ask you guys something. I've been thinking about this since I watched this match earlier. And did you look at Eddie Gilbert's eyes? Did you notice anything about his eyes?
Yes.
Did you notice a little bit of perspiration on the face there?
Yes.
A little bit, yeah.
You think there's a chance, just a chance now, that Eddie Gilbert was 3 sheets to the wind in this promo?
Are you suggesting he was on something?
I don't want to cast aspersions on anybody. I'm saying that I think there might be a chance there. At least there's a chance that he may have imbibed in a substance or two before doing this interview.
You're saying the man was loaded for this interview.
I'm saying the man was loaded. That's exactly what I'm saying. I looked at his eyes and I was like, oh boy, he's either just nervous as all get out, or he has just been doing about a mound of cocaine before this interview started. And it's not like the interview is crazy or anything. It's just his eyes the whole time. I'm like, oh my God, Eddie, come on.
Yeah.
Get it together, man.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I sort of had the same thought about Sting because he was very odd in this, and like he's just kind of rambling about Muta not really making a point or anything, and he twirls off, like he literally just like twirls in a circle and goes off camera, and I'm like, what the hell was that, Sting? So I don't know. Him and Eddie might have been,
Maybe they were imbibing in the same substance. And Gordon, of course, as we know, Gordon Soley just liked to drink all the time. So he was, Gordon didn't know. He couldn't tell.
Gordon was the most sober of the three.
Of the three.
Yeah.
And so this sets the stage. And again, I apologize. I never know where these pay-per-views are located. I think this might have been in Baltimore.
It is.
Baltimore.
Yes. So Muta comes out, makes the entrance first alongside Gary Hart. And again, he just looks so cool. He looks like nothing that, again, I was 5 at the time, and he was like nothing I had ever seen before. No wrestler had ever looked like him that I had seen. And so I loved face-painted wrestlers in general, big Ultimate Warrior fan, Sting fan, Road Warriors, all that. So automatically he was on my good list for that. And the spraying of the mist was awesome. He does that right before the match. And JR informs us that he's spraying the green mist. And, of course, we know that there's also the dangerous red mist and the most dangerous of all, the yellow mist.
The yellow mist, yeah.
So anyway, that's awesome. Sting's music hits, that badass car salesman theme song that I love so much.
Car salesman theme song.
Still my favorite theme song. You hear it on those car commercials and stuff, but still my favorite Sting theme song. Just amazing. He comes out, gets a monster pop, and Eddie Gilbert's there too. And nothing against Eddie Gilbert, but he just doesn't fit Sting's whole image or vibe at all. But Sting gets this huge pop. He comes out. He's got the jacket. He's excited. He's got the belt. It's a 2-ring setup because there's a War Games match at this pay-per-view later on. So it's a 2-ring setup. So Muta and Gary Hart are in one ring. Eddie and Sting are in the other ring. And they're all arguing with each other trying to get in the same ring. And finally, Sting just says, fuck it, and runs and jumps over both sets of top ropes and on top of Muta into ring number 2. Awesome spot. Quite honestly, that's the spot I remember most from this match. It's one of my favorite childhood wrestling memories, legitimately. That's one of the things that made me like the diehard Sting fan that I was as a kid, was this image. Because it was like, he came off like, it's hard to describe because nowadays you see wrestlers do feats of athleticism like this all the time and make it look like nothing. But at that time, you didn't see anything like this. A dude just clear the top ropes of 2 rings like that. It was such a feat of athleticism. It was like superheroic in nature. And anyway, awesome start to this match. And they just start going balls to the wall with the high spots, up and down, press slams. Muta hits him with a backbreaker and tries to go and hits the handspring elbow, which is one of his signature moves that he does better than anybody that's done it since. And then he goes up for the moonsault. Sting moves, he lands on his feet, and then Sting catches him with a clothesline out of the corner, if memory serves. And the agility of Muta here to land on his feet from the moonsault, again, we had never seen anything like that in 1989. Somebody that A, did a moonsault, and B, did it and landed on his feet off the top rope. Mm-hmm. Incredible shit. Yeah. So anyway, they engage in a lot of high spots at this point. They trade dives. Sting dives onto him. Muta dives onto Sting. Gary Hart makes his presence known a little bit. There's a spot where I think Muta might have been out of position, but I'm not 100% sure, where Sting looked like he was going to do a dive over the top, but then saw Muta was too far away, so he lands on his feet and just punches him from the outside. And they get in there. Muta takes the heat. He takes control on Sting and grinds him down with various holds and putting him in a bad position and wearing him down a little bit. Looks like Muta's got control. Sting bounces back. Another press slam, hits him with the drop kicks, the explosive. It really felt like the story of this match was a game of one-upsmanship. Anything you can do, I can do better. Every time one of them does something, the other one comes back and tries to do something a little bit better, whether it be a drop kick. Muta does those spinning martial arts kicks. He throws as JR calls them, judo chops.
Judo chops.
And which my friend Jeremy would always chastise me in college for the fact that there are no chops in judo, but nonetheless. So Muta is attacking Sting with his judo offense, and Sting will come back with his drop kicks and his, as JR puts it, good old American offense, and hits him with flying clothesline, and just athletic showcase here for both guys. They slow it down for a while, and then they get ready for the closing stretch. And the biggest surprise of this match to me, which I didn't remember actually, was Muta goes to spray the red poison mist at Sting. Sting ducks, and it hits the referee, who may have been Nick Patrick, but I can't remember.
Yes.
And the red mist disables him, and it sends him outside the ring. And at this point, you would think, well, this is where Sting's going to get the visual pinfall, right? Because he's a babyface. No, quite the opposite. Muta takes advantage on Sting, lays him out with a snapmare, hits the moonsault, and has him down for a 3 count. But by the time Tommy Young, the replacement referee, slides in, he counts 1, 2, and Sting kicks out, and the pop is huge, and they've got him. They've got the crowd hook, line, and sinker. The crowd just knows that Sting's going to make his big comeback now. But they wrestle for a second, and then Sting catches him in a belly-to-back suplex, bridges up, and there's a 1, a 2, and a 3 from Tommy Young, and Sting seems to have won the match clean, right? Well, not exactly, because here comes Nick Patrick, even though he can't see anything because his eyes have been burned with red poison mist, and he's waving it off. And we don't know what it means, and neither do the commentators, because apparently it's not explained to them. And even though Sting and Eddie Gilbert are celebrating with the title, Gary Hart takes the title away from Sting and hands it to Muta, and they start celebrating. And they walk off, and the fans start chanting, bullshit, bullshit. And Sting looks confused, and Eddie looks confused, and Tommy Young looks confused, and JR sounds confused. So there's controversy here. And then JR says, well, maybe both of their shoulders were down on the mat. And they show the replay, and not only were both their shoulders not on the mat, neither of their shoulders were on the mat.
Mm-hmm.
No, because Muta got his right shoulder up before the 3 count. Sting never had his shoulders on the mat. So I don't know what they were going for with that finish exactly. But what I do remember is that this led to the television title being held up and Muta and Sting having a series of matches at house shows, etc. for it. And then they had a television match on a show that is not available on Peacock, which I understand that Tim will address that very soon. Mm-hmm. But a show that is not available on Peacock, known as the WCW, as I knew it, Power Hour, as Jim Ross would call it, or as the Power Hour, as it was known. And this is actually the first time that I got to see Sting and Muta wrestle, was on the Power Hour, where Muta won the TV title, beat Sting in controversial fashion, and became the TV champion. But anyway, right now they have a controversial finish, but the match itself, I maintain, is a badass match. It was a showcase for both guys. It was their first big match against each other of what would be many in the future. And I loved it. It brought me back to childhood. glad I picked this match, and I think it kind of got us off to a good start on showing what the Great Muta's story was all about in WCW.
Yeah, I was glad you picked this too. I think it's a good representative match for Muta in WCW. I've always had somewhat mixed feelings on this one. I think it's a very exciting, very watchable match. Certainly there's no dull moments, but there's certainly some awkward spots that I don't know if I put that down to Sting kind of not just not being used to working with a guy like Muta, and being really like kind of out of his element. Or if that's really a case of Muta sort of adapting more to this American, Southern wrestling style of WCW, still here in the late 80s. But they definitely had some points where you could tell there were some like major miscommunications.
Yeah, the dive spot comes to mind because I was like, oh, Sting's about to splat, but then he kind of changes his motion in midair and lands on his feet. But
True,
but I was like,
at least they did correct course. They had enough
right.
Presence of mind to be like, well, that's not going to work. Let me adjust. Even though it's not going to be as visually stunning, like I'm not going to look like a total idiot, or a deer caught in the headlights, which they do at one point. But there's not too much of that. Speaking of the Sting dive, I think we've talked about this before, Greg Phillips. You know what? He credited his great vertical leaping ability to. That would be the Sting ass.
The Sting ass.
The Sting
ass.
That's
where all the power comes from.
That's what generates the power.
And we can say that's true because he was a semifinalist in the famous Ass Off tournament of about 10 years ago.
Yeah, of rspwfa2.livejournal.com. And Sting certainly has Sting ass. I mean, that's who it's named for. And I guess you could call Sting a power bottom. He has a power bottom.
Yes, true.
So that's what the glutes and all that power is generated from the glutes. So we get to see that.
It's amazing because he has Sting ass, but it's not like what I call the Dr. Death diaper ass.
No, it's not diaper ass. No, definitely. Right. So I enjoyed that, certainly. But I don't know, this match to me is sort of a microcosm of this 1989 Great American Bash as a whole, in that I find it a little bit overrated. I know people really, really talk up this pay-per-view, like, in terms of, like, this is some people's just all-time, not even just WCW, but wrestling pay-per-views. And I look at it and I'm kind of like, I don't know, outside of the main event, which legitimately is one of the best WCW matches ever. The tag between Midnights and Fantastics, which we've talked about on this past episode of this show. Everything else.
I don't think that's on GAB 89 because I think the Midnights.
Oh, you're right. That's on 88.
Yeah.
That's on 88. So it's not
89 is the War Games match with Midnights and a bunch of other people.
You're right. So it doesn't even have that match. Fuck me.
But we have Luger, I think.
We have talked about Steamboat Luger, which is on here. And again, I think is a good match, not a blowaway. It has one of the weaker War Games matches, does this 89 show.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, not to say it's bad by any means. It's just the way that people talk about it. I'm like, really? But at the same time, I also get that you have a talent like the Great Muta, who nobody had ever seen before in the United States. No one had ever seen, like, 2/3 of the moves that he does. A handspring back elbow, that's like, what? What is this? The moonsault, again, in WCW in 1989. Nobody's going to be doing that. And I mean, that's not even half of his arsenal, really. Like, we don't see in this match the Muta lock, which is a crazy, amazing, cool-looking submission. Just a lot of that stuff that he does, he does get a good bit of his shit in here in this match, I feel like, but he doesn't totally unload the tank. So while I do, again, like the match, I do find it a bit overrated, and I hate the finish. I really hate it.
The finish didn't work the way that it was intended to, because I think I know what they were. I think they were trying to do the both shoulder, all four shoulders on the mat finish.
Yeah.
And then neither guy got the memo. But it didn't work. It wasn't explained well. They just should have had Sting beat him, honestly, and had a rematch afterwards if they wanted to. But
Sting also kind of, I won't say he kills the moonsault, but the fact that he does kick out. I know there was a delayed count and stuff with those.
I also felt like Tommy Young slid in too soon on that 6 spot. Because maybe that's the WWE that's beating that into me, but I feel like they need the Earl Hebner, like, incredibly long delay before sliding in to do the the false finish, so to speak. So I didn't have a problem with Sting kicking out there. It's just I think the timing of it was just a little bit messed up by somebody at ringside.
Right. If he's going to connect with the move, which it looks beautiful when he flies.
Oh yeah, it's the best moonsaults to me. That and Kurt Angle's are the two best moonsaults that I've seen in wrestling, I think.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy. But it's I think maybe the story of this match, which you talked about as well, Greg, it's like Muta trying to be the better version of what Sting has been for a couple of years now, where he's that very flashy, eye-catching wrestler, but Muta wants to prove that he can hang as like a fundamentalist more so than Sting, for example, who, maybe the criticism at the time is, well, he can rattle off all these sweet moves, but can he chain wrestle, And I think that's why he's had so many matches with Ric Flair up to this point, because they love telling that story, right? They love challenging Sting to go to the mat with a guy like Flair. And, it's only 1989 here. But when you bring in Muta, and it's, he does have the basics down and kind of, shows off in ways that Sting does not. It's a compelling piece of psychology.
After all, he is, as Gary Michael Capetta reminds us, the Pearl of the Orient.
Yes, very much.
But one thing about Muta, you mentioned that he goes through he doesn't even display 3/4 of his arsenal or what have you. One of the things about Muta that's so cool that I found throughout all three of our matches, and just any time you watch Muta, that instantly, because I think about it, I was like, I'm trying to bring myself back to my childhood and why I loved the Great Muta so much as a kid. And yes, it was the face paint and all the stuff that I mentioned before, the look and the moves and all that stuff. But it's not just that, because there were other guys that did cool moves, and there were other guys that had face paint in that era. And other than Sting, none of them were like my absolute favorite, other than him and the Warrior. And then I realized it's because I've always been a fan of wrestlers that make themselves different in little ways. And with Muta, it's the way, his body language. Nobody moves like the Great Muta. Nobody walks like the Great Muta. Nobody does the little pose that he does after he hits his big spin kick or something. He just, his body language is so interesting. When he delivers an elbow drop, it's not a regular elbow drop. It's that power drive elbow where he shakes
snap on it.
Yeah, he shakes. It reminds me a lot of why I became a fan of Shinsuke Nakamura when he was in New Japan Pro Wrestling about 10 years ago, because I had never seen anybody move like him in wrestling. And maybe the only guy that I had that was close was Muta when I was a kid. And that's kind of what he has even in this match early on in his WCW career. He walks and moves in a way that nobody else does. Think of someone like Jake Roberts, who, even though he didn't do a lot of moves, the way that he sort of slithered into the ring and the way he would pull himself up from the ropes, he made himself different with the way that he moved and the way that he acted. Randy Orton does that. I always love wrestlers like that, and I just wanted to point that out. I think that's one of the things that made Muta stand out to the WCW audience, to the point where I think I didn't necessarily pick some of these matches, but by the end of that year, by the end of 1989, you could make a strong case that he probably should have been turned babyface and given a big push, but it was not to be.
Yeah, I think he could have gotten over easily as a face.
So, I think the first time I saw Muta was actually, it was at MSG at that show that we went to, and I fell asleep, during.
Oh God, that show.
Yeah, that show.
Just a few
And
years ago. Okay.
yeah, in 2019, and I was a very young wrestling fan, and that, I didn't get it. I didn't get it at that time.
Well, this is not to say Muta put you to sleep. It's just that show you were pretty much cooked by the time.
That show was. I mean, MSG is great, but it was just a lot. So anyway, whenever you picked him, Greg, that was my my memory. So I was like, okay, this will be fun, and I actually really got into him. And
I wondered if you had ever seen him before we did this episode.
Not really, no. Just that one time.
In theory.
Yeah, theory. I was present for that. And that body language thing that you just talked about, Greg, is what stood out for me. And I do agree with Tim, there's a lot of the miscues and I don't know, it's like a language barrier that shouldn't exist in the ring, but sort of does.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely affected them, but Muta never let it shake him. There was never, you could see them working it and trying to, they did a good job at fixing what they would do wrong, but, sometimes it takes the steam out of a match, or it distracts you, but you could see him learning and adjusting during the match.
Mm-hmm.
And Sting too. Sting was doing the same thing. So I really thought it was interesting to watch them learn each other and how confident Muta was. And because, the crowd's, so hot for Sting. Nobody's really cheering Muta at this point. So it was impressive to me that he was classy all the way through the match.
And to your point of them learning each other, this would sort of be the first of what would be many, many times they'd wrestle on TV or on in Japan or what have you over the years, and they became very, very good opponents for each other.
Yeah.
The cool high spots that you guys called out, that super sweet high crossbody on Sting onto the floor, kind of reciprocating the dive that Muta took to start the match, which was awesome. I was like, I've never really been a big Sting fan, but more of a Sting fan than I was before we started the show. But that was hot. I was like, okay, Sting, I see you. It was, like you said, we don't normally see that sort of thing in this era. But also there are things like that long ab stretch in there, and I don't mind it, but it's sort of, you could see them trying to find a way to the next spot, using it. So, I like him using the red spray. What is that? What do they use for spray? Is it water and food coloring? Is it?
I'm not sure, actually. It's kind of embarrassing.
Probably just water and food coloring.
I would think so, but I don't, because I don't know how he loads it either, because he always did that thing where he would poke himself in the throat or whatever, but I don't know if that was legit or if he just, I don't know, because he would sometimes spray multiple different colors during the course of one match.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how he did it.
To me. I kind of don't want to know.
It might be the old Ken Shamrock blood condom.
Ooh.
Remember, you fill a condom up with your preferred fluid of choice. Yeah. Bite down on that and you're good to go. Kinky, huh?
I don't know how you wrestle with a condom in your mouth.
Well, not the whole match. You've got it kind of stashed. Maybe the ref hands it to you at some point, or
when you're Ken Shamrock, you can wrestle with anything in your mouth.
Yeah. Oh, fully.
So, it was, I would say it tended to be good. I enjoyed it. Like you said, very watchable, Tim. The ending though, oh boy.
Yeah.
It is just more of that, that miscommunication, not knowing for sure. Somebody said something wrong when we were planning this match, or I don't know, but, But, it's a means to an end, really, I guess, to get a series of matches out of it. So, can't really hate too much.
That's the thing. I'm not opposed to doing a controversial finish where the object is to hold the belt up. Sorry, Greg, the belt.
God damn it, pal.
The title.
So that they can do a series of rematches. Like, that's fine. But the way they went about it, it felt more like, well, this is the way you would set up a Nick Patrick heel turn. Is he going to do a crooked referee gimmick now? Because this blind son of a bitch comes back in the ring and makes a bad call. I mean, a bad call that the camera. I mean, Sting's. There's like no question. Sting is arching, bridging off the mat. Like, that's you can't even.
And Muta gets his shoulder up.
And Muta then gets one of his shoulders up before so it's like, in no way, shape,
it's just
or form.
Shitty officiating all around.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. And
well, and here's the other thing, just as relevant. That's why I wonder what the finish was supposed to be, if it was even supposed to be what we're talking about, because now, far be it from them to ever repeat finishes, but they had just done that exact finish at the clash between Flair and Steamboat a few months prior. Do you remember? Because the back suplex, both guys' shoulders were down, and at the last second, Steamboat gets his shoulder up, but it looks like both their shoulders are down or what have you. It's controversial, and it's used to set up another rematch. So, like, would they really have done that same exact finish on pay-per-view that soon, that close to that one? Maybe so.
Right.
But if so, they did not accomplish their goal.
Well,
thank God.
Quick word about face paint. Sorry.
No.
I'm not a fan of the Sting's design here. The Sting. I'm not the Stinger.
The WCW and the SummerSlam.
The Stinger. I don't like that scorpion on the forehead thing either, any more than you do, Greg. I do admire, however, that both guys with their face paint matched it tone for tone to their attire.
It's true.
Which, in Muta's case, it seems like it wouldn't be too terribly difficult, but Sting, I mean, he had some pretty distinct colors going on with the orange and the sort of teal. Like, you gotta find, I mean, how do you find face paint that's gonna, I mean, he's got to do some extensive mixing perhaps to,
maybe Eddie Gilbert has to help him.
Take some darker colors. Yeah, that's what they're spending all their time in the back doing. Much more wholesome.
Yeah.
That's why their eyes were messed up. They were huffing paint. Yeah.
Oh, dude. That's it.
Okay, that explains it.
I like it. But that's a great point, though. It did match pretty exact.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's difficult.
Impressive.
Yeah. Especially with the lighting and cameras and all that.
Yeah, you don't know how that's going to look on TV.
So weird.
And interestingly, I didn't even think about that, but I don't recall Sting's face paint chipping off in this match like it sometimes does in other matches.
That's true.
Yeah. It did for both.
He's pretty intact.
It's not like when he wrestled Vader and it was like pretty much all off of his face by the end of the match.
Well, it's Vader.
Yeah. True. When a guy is full on hitting you in the face,
it tends to fall off.
30 minutes is probably going to do it.
Yeah.
God, I love Vader so much. Okay. I'm just imagining him.
As an aside, have you guys listened to Mick Foley's podcast? He has a lot of great Vader stories.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I need to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think my pick is up next, and so you can't find this one on the Peacock, Tim, but you can find it YouTube, and it is Ric Flair versus the Great Muta from 11/18 of '89 on the WCW show that came on Saturdays on TBS.
Yes, World Championship Wrestling.
World Championship Wrestling. And here's the thing: when you picked it, I was like, okay, Peacock's got all those on there, because I remember watching a lot of those World Championship Wrestlings from '89. And I was scrolling on down, and just inexplicably it stops. Sort of like in that summer, kind of at the end of the summer, I feel like. I'm like, man, what the hell? So I kind of got half hot about it. Because I know, like, kind of my whole thing with this podcast, not hot at you, Jenny, but just the situation, because my whole approach or philosophy to doing this podcast has been, let's make it as accessible to people as possible. So let's try to stick to what's actually available on WWE Network, now Peacock, which hasn't been too much of a strain for us, I feel like. But when I get to something like this, that this should not only be on the fucking network / Peacock, it should have been on there 5 fucking years ago.
Yes.
Like, I understand we're not getting these classic content drops with the regularity that we used to, but they're not even like drip feeding it, really. Like, we don't even have any expectation that it will ever appear there. So I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, you know what? When it comes to this type of shit, look, I understand not every single random syndicated B show in the world is going to be like, okay, yeah, we're not going to find WCW Pro or Worldwide or Power Hour or Main Event or all those random acts. Like, kind of asking a lot to say that they should be on the network by now. I get that. But for something like this, come the fuck on, people. We've been giving you hoes our $10 for what, 8 years now?
Yeah.
Now potentially $6. I get it. Yeah. It's down to the Peacock discount. I understand, but it's like, I'm just tired of it. I'm fucking tired of it, man. So
enough
I think there's a middle ground.
Time for a change.
It is time for a change. So I hereby declare we're opening up the field. You know, if it's not on Peacock, but it's a match y'all want to talk about on this show, let's just do it. Unless it's like too far out there in terms of, well, you have to make sure you go to this private server and talk up this guy and know this.
If you log into your Daily Motion account, and send a private message, you can have it DM to your folder.
And it's, make sure you know this person who will let you get in good with, like, no. But if
you get all that done, you get to see Brad Armstrong take on Steve Armstrong in a 5-minute match on WCW Pro.
And I'm not trying to dog that. I understand that stuff is out there. It serves its purpose. And it's very important to things like a chrono podcast, which this show is not. But, I mean, if it's at least out on YouTube, Daily Motion, what have you, it's fair game as far as I'm concerned. Now, there's got to be a middle ground between it's not on Peacock and it should be, or we have to, overturn every stone on earth to find the damn thing.
Right.
Well, I mean, YouTube is, even more accessible than Peacock.
It is. Yeah, in a lot of ways it sure is. Yeah.
So
all you got to do is search for the match. It's right there. Yeah. Probably not going anywhere. Look, there's no guarantee, even if the shit comes off of YouTube, there's no guarantee it's going to stay on Peacock, even if it is there. We've seen content go away between upgrades on the old network and migration to Peacock. Remember Hidden Gems? Well, can't find them now.
That's all we can do is remember them because they're not there now. Unless you have a VPN, I understand it. Then you can still.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But that's the other thing. Also, from what I understand, I'm no businessist, but as I understand it, their streaming deal comes to an end at the end of next year. So what, or 2024, whenever it is, eventually it will run out is what I'm getting at. And then what happens? What if ESPN or I don't know, what if Disney buys the WWE content or whatever, and then they have to take it all off of Peacock, redo it, and then migrate it all onto this other streaming platform. Who knows what we'll lose in that conversion?
God, so
they might decide WCW is too much wrestling content for them to have on.
Exactly.
Now I'm depressed. Thanks.
Well, and the thing, it's not to say that, the network sucks. I hate Peacock.
No.
This is the worst thing. It's still a great resource. Don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
It's just, I'm tired of not finding things that just should be on there by now. Like, I feel like
if it were still the network, we probably would have had it by now. But the fact that they put all their resources into Peacock, NBC doesn't care. What do they care?
Or even if they told us, it's going to take forever, but we'll get there. Here's sort of our schedule as far as, once a month we'll give you 5 episodes of WCW Saturday Night.
I want to be able to relive
5 episodes of Sunday Night Heat.
Listen, John Peacock, at NBC Studios. I want to be able to live out the entire 2 or 3 year Armstrong family curse storyline on WCW Saturday Night.
There you go.
I want the
My
Booty
God.
Man's debut. I want
can
stuff
be
like
patient. Yeah, I can be patient, but just tell me it's gonna happen. And I just don't have any confidence. I don't have any confidence.
Think about it. If we do a Barry Hole-in-One Darso episode, we're not going to have anything because none of it's on
Nothing. None of it. So, I'm sorry,
right.
Jenny. I didn't mean to.
No, I was just
step on
waiting for
match.
your promo to be done. Matt's going to be very uncomfortable when he listens to this.
Sorry, Matt Souza. I know you don't like when I cut friends. Not directed at you.
We have Jim Ross and my favorite Kevin Sullivan.
This is
commentary.
weird having Kevin Sullivan on.
It's very weird. Like
you could not get 2 different accents on commentary.
I know, it's great.
They are Kevin Sullivan.
I'm sorry, this is from what, November 28th, I think I had written down.
I had 18th. Hopefully we'll just say match.
It's Great Muta versus Ric Flair. Just search for it.
I think you're both right. I think it was taped on the 18th and aired on the 28th.
Okay.
Fair enough. It's the only singles match of any length between these two, so you'll know it when you see it.
And where do they film these?
I think this was back in the center stage days.
I was thinking probably.
That makes sense. Yeah,
they might have been at Techwood. They might have been at Techwood Drive, but I don't know in '89 if that would have been the case. I think that was more in the '90s Saturday night.
I think era. It is center stage actually, where they're at.
The crowd is hot, especially for Flair and his powder blue. Muta sprays green this time, which looks cool. And then Flair answers with a woo, which
that
was
good. Awesome.
It was really good. And that kind of tells you what we're going to be dealing with, because it's a constant battle in this whole match. They feel each other out for a bit, a little bit cautious. Flair attacks the arm as Kevin talks about Gary Hart getting Muta in the gym to work on the American style of wrestling. Flair rolls to the outside to fuck with Hart a little bit, and Muta climbs the ropes there in the corner to the top, and I thought he was going to just fly off on Ric Flair. And, it looked like he wanted to, but he sort of backs off. Flair circles the ring.
Maybe Rick wasn't quite ready for that high of a spot yet.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like he wanted to fly, and Rick was like, no. So he kind of walks around the ring, rolls back in. And Muta just keeps his eyes on Flair the whole time, as he's walking around the ring. So he's really sizing him up and studying him a lot. Climbs back in. Goes for the figure 4 pretty much immediately, but Muta scrambles away, grabs the bottom rope, and then sort of flips out of the ring to the floor and circles the ring like Flair just did, right? While Flair mouths off at him and Hart. Flair gets Muta back on the mat, and starts going after the arm. As JR talks about Rick's year-round cardio and how impressive it is, and there's no off-season, in wrestling, so you gotta be in tip-top shape. They grapple for a bit, it looks good, Muta is trying to, really be smart here, and stay on top of Flair and not let him, sort of take over on him. So he does a good job at it, I thought. He goes to the mat and starts working on Flair's leg. Kevin talks about, that's not smart. You should probably not do that. You should be high flying, right? That's the kind of wrestler you are. Why are you not jumping on Ric Flair? But he's gonna work the mat with Ric Flair, which is impressive. And Muta twists the ankle, and Flair is just struggling to keep his shoulders off the mat. And then he kind of maneuvers him into this one-leg Boston Crab, one of Kevin's favorite moves, as he says, and then transitions that into I don't know if this is the Muta lock. Is this?
That's the Muta lock.
Okay.
That's the Muta lock.
It's
I didn't know
that
that
inverted STF.
But they didn't call it that. But it was amazing. It was fucking awesome. I was stood up. I was like, oh my God. Because he bridges and grabs that face lock and then just holds him. And got that leg wrapped up. Oh, I was flipping out. And he holds it for a while. The ref is making Flair pick up his arm, and Flair's, he's struggling, but he's not giving up. It looks so cool. I lost my mind.
The only move that's even cooler than that, this is what I really dropped trowel for, and you never see it anymore these days, Greg. You might remember kind of back in the 90s. Start with a Muta lock, so you get the bridge inverted STF. The attacker then rolls over onto his stomach so that he's got the dude in like a suspended, almost like a bow and arrow type position.
Hanging over. The other guy's on top of him, and the guy's face down, stretching his neck. Yep.
Right. Still with the legs tied up. That always looked really sick.
I love it. And the camera is perfect. It gives an amazing shot of their faces side by side. Muta's upside down and Flair just struggling. It was beautiful. And then if that's not enough, Flair's leg's still wrapped up. Muta rolls over into his back, puts Flair up on his legs, and stretches him across. I was like, ah! And he just holds it, and it looks tight, and it's like controlled. Flair, I don't know why he wasn't like slapping Muta in the face, trying to poke his eyes. Like he was working the hold more than he was trying to escape the hold, which was good. Yeah. It makes Muta look insane. Totally worked. It looks so awesome. Commentary, I feel like, didn't sell it as much as I thought they should. And, I mean, they sort of popped for it, but it just, I don't know. It felt a little subdued for me.
It may not have been established yet as like one of his signature holds, because it did become the that's literally what it's known in wrestling as, the Muta lock. So I think maybe he had not yet established that. That may have been one of the first times. I'm not sure. I couldn't say for sure because I haven't watched enough of his '89 stuff recently, but I know he didn't do it in the Sting match.
Well, because Kevin, as Muta is doing this amazing thing, and Kevin's like, yeah, Gary Hart is determined to make Flair tap out and give up and quit. I'm like, fuck a Gary Hart. Look at Muta. Like, shut the fuck up. So I sort of got
I believe you mean Gary Hart.
Yeah, exactly. Muta pulls him back and continues working on that leg, manhandles Flair pretty good, breaks his eyes, pretzels his legs up again, sort of like facing him, got his legs all wrapped up and just sort of leaning on Flair, making Flair pick up his body, his shoulders off the mat. They slide to the outside. Muta grabs a bag, a sandbag, something crazy on the side there, and just fucking throws it at Rick, who's kind of draped across the apron. This is when this careful sort of back and forth, like, grappling submission match sort of snaps, and after Muta throws the bag at him, because then they just start tearing into each other on the side. Lots of vicious punches, chops on the floor. They just sort of knock each other down. They get back in the ring. You do the more chops. This is where Flair kind of settles in with his punches, his comeback. Big inverted atomic drop on Muta, and then more chops and punches. Flair kind of gives Muta some of his leg work back to him. Muta's pretty good at selling for Flair too. I mean, nobody sells like Flair, but he hangs with him. I think he makes Flair look, even better.
JR says that Flair's taking him to Skewel. He's taking him to Skewel.
Muta throws him over in the corner, but he does this little flip thing, and he flips over the ropes, lands on the apron, goes over to the other side, and brings down the big elbow on the Muta. The crowd stands up when Flair starts to attempt the figure four, but Hart jumps in. The bell rings. The ref tries to raise Rick's hand, but Flair sort of swats him away. just kind of slides out of the ring, goes right for Hart, and locks the figure 4 on Hart on the floor.
Yes.
Actually, wasn't that, was it Hart or was it the Dragon
Oh,
Master?
it was the Dragon Master
Oh,
that
it
he
was
got.
the Dragon Master.
That he got after on the floor. Yeah.
Easy mistake to make because they're both bald
they look exactly
somewhat portly. So
I thought it was Gary Hart at first, too.
the Dragon Master was one of the lamest characters of all time.
Yeah.
I think.
So
That was so cheesy.
Kevin and JR start losing, and they're screaming like, he's gonna break his leg! He's gonna break his leg! Muta saves them with red spray to Rick's face, and then here comes Buzz Sawyer literally out of nowhere.
Yeah, I don't know where.
It was just like, what?
And boy, that first shot that he hit Rick
was rough.
That first shot he hit Rick with was some bullshit. I was like, man, if I was Rick, I would have driven him out of the territory. He hits Rick right in the back of the neck, as hard as he can, it looked like. I'm like, Jesus.
So then they pull, Sawyer and Muta pull Flair up into the ring, and do like a suplex on him. And then Sawyer splashes him, and Muta follows up with a moonsault. So they're just beating his ass here. And then Buzz counts 3 as Muta covers Flair. So that was fun. The ending was chaos. Flair wins. And I loved this match. Like Muta he has, like I said, this sort of confidence that he never seems fazed really by any of this stuff. Like, I don't know. I was just really impressed with how he hung with Flair and the chemistry that he and Muta and Sting maybe lacked. He finds here with Flair. I thought they had more chemistry. I mean, maybe him and Sting get better over their series, but I was way more into this pairing. You know, you guys seemed pretty excited when I picked it, so I think it's one. I'm not sure. Do people watch this often? I mean, I know they can't find it, but is it regarded?
I didn't know it existed.
I didn't know it existed either. I've never
seen it. So it's a bit of a gem. So I was excited. I was excited for that aspect of it too, and to see a super awesome performance by Muta. What do you think, Tim?
I like this match a lot, and again, I'd always wondered whether Muta and Flair had a singles match, because they did feud when Muta got involved in Flair's feud with Terry Funk, and then Flair and Sting teamed up, and that's sort of you get some power tag matches, that fall of '89 at the one Clash and at Halloween Havoc. Those are a pair of really cool tag matches.
Yeah, I almost picked both of those actually.
Yeah, I took a look at both of those as well.
Yeah, me too.
I love that we all watched the same matches for this.
Also, Halloween Havoc would have had the double usage of the Great Muta saving everyone's life by putting the fire out with his mist.
Well, yes, there's something to be said for that. But I always wondered, you could really transition very easily into a singles feud between Muta and Flair. So they must have had a singles match at some point along the way. And I mean, I know that they all 4 guys in the stupid fucking Iron Man tournament at Starrcade '89 had matches, but the Flair Muta portion of that is literally like 2 minutes.
Yep.
So that barely even counts. And I know it's not hard to find these things out today. I don't know. I guess I'd never really taken the time to look, and sure enough, here's this nice little hidden gem of a match sitting out there. WCW World Championship Wrestling from late '89. Good little TV match here. And it gave me pretty much exactly what I wanted from these two. Mm-hmm. And I agree that the chemistry between them is pretty much off the charts. Very interesting that on commentary, I think it's Sullivan in particular who's emphasizing what a mistake it is for Muta to try to hang with Flair on the mat. Like, what are you doing? Stick to your strikes, your kicks. What brung you to the dance, pal? How are you gonna go toe to toe with Ric Flair, one of the all time great clinicians out here? But sure enough, he does. Like, if anything, he's kind of getting Flair rattled in the early goings of this match. And it's Flair who has to fire up in his comeback, Jenny, like you mentioned, and sort of resort to more of a brawling style before he gains an advantage. So I kind of really like that role reversal between the two of them. The Flair chops are really on point in this match. They sound like gunshots. I mean,
they're brutal.
Great stuff there. Just the acoustics and, those old, TV studio wrestling.
Absolutely.
They're amazing.
Gunther-like for modern audiences.
Gunther-like, yeah. Walter-like, if you will.
Yep.
Walter, if Ric Flair was, several pounds heavier. As a proto-German fascist should be. Austrian-German fascist, excuse me. Anyway, this really cool segmented match that tells a really concise story. The commentary does let it down a little bit. This is JR and his ultra nerdy just call the moves mode, which I've never liked from him. Sullivan is, on color. I mean, doesn't add a whole lot, so they don't exactly complement each other is the point. But for a match that has like a non-finish here, it still kind of leaves you satisfied, with Muta getting his heat back after the DQ, going over on Flair. So you want to see what's next for these two, right? And I definitely wanted, like another follow-up in some form or fashion of this, which I guess we don't really get unless stupid Starrcade 89 counts as a blow-off. But
So this is where all of my listening to Grilling JR comes in handy, because JR has told a lot of stories about Muta from this era. And as many of our listeners may remember from prior shows, WCW at this time had a booking committee. And it was a very large booking committee that consisted of such individuals as Ric Flair, Jim Cornette, Jim Ross, Kevin Sullivan, Eddie Gilbert. I believe Paulie Dangerously might have been on it. I'm not sure. I think George Scott was still around doing stuff. It was a significant amount of people on this booking committee. And what JR says is that he and one or two others on the committee, I think Michael Hayes was in there too, but I don't know what his stance was on this. JR said he and maybe one or two others on the committee wanted a big push for Muta. Like, they wanted Muta to be the world champion, actually, or at least to be in pay-per-view world title matches with Ric Flair. And they believed that Muta could get over as a babyface, big time. However, apparently Gary Hart, this according to JR, Gary Hart at that time did not want Muta to turn babyface, because that was the reason Gary Hart was on TV, was because of the Great Muta. Because obviously, Buzz Sawyer and Dragon Master or whatever were not going to be getting TV time without Muta. So Gary Hart got in the booking committee's ears and told them, no, this won't work. He won't work as a babyface because American audiences are not going to cheer a babyface that can't speak English. So as a result, they killed the babyface idea, and as a result, they killed the main event idea because they wanted Flair to turn to set up his match with Sting, and the whole thing got killed. And then Muta ended up getting pissed off and going back to Japan, and that was pretty much the end of Muta as a main event potential WCW attraction.
Wow.
Well, then, that's depressing.
I don't think Hart was wrong about that.
I understand where he was coming from, but some of the matches we didn't pick for the show, but like Muta was getting some crowd support. For instance, there is a I think it's a 6-man tag, Tim. You may remember the match I'm talking about. That's the J-Tex against the Horsemen, but it's the night that the Horsemen turned on Sting. Yeah. And because they turned on Sting, the crowd has completely turned on Flair and the Horsemen. And now they're cheering Muta like he's the biggest babyface in the company in this match. Like every time he tags in, he's getting this monster reaction and Muta chants. And then in some of the 92 matches I was watching, the crowd there in center stage is chanting for Muta throughout the match. So it's like I think it could have worked if they had tried it. I just think they were not eager to try things that they weren't certain were going to work.
Right.
And also it would have helped them out when Sting got hurt, because then they wouldn't have had to turn Luger and upset their apple cart, so to speak. So
what if?
Right. Yeah. What if? That is an interesting what if. Like, if any company seemed to have the willingness to give it a go with the international stars, so to speak, it was kind of WCW in the early 90s. Think of how, like, I mean, I know it's not a good match, but think of what a showcase Muta and Shono got at, like, that one start. I mean, it's a terribly boring match, but it goes on for a long time. And it's like, to give them that kind of just ring time to two Japanese stars, I think the fans deserve a better match, but it kind of says something that they put him out there, right?
And he got a lot of support. I mean, he was getting chants throughout that. He wrestled 3 times that night and got huge chants each time. And I think Bill Watts, despite his reputation, might have been willing to give that a try. Of course, he was the one that was closest to JR as well.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't feel like they ever even came close to doing that in his other runs. 89 would have been the closest, but it just it wasn't really in the cards, because they didn't want to give that a shot. But
that idea was too radical for 1989, but by 92. Yeah, really.
By 92,
the more progressive era under Bill Watts.
Bill Watts, yeah.
Social justice warrior, Bill Watts.
Yeah. Real quick. I'll relay one story from the Foley podcast.
Oh yeah.
So they had this is 92, and Watts had come in, and they're getting close to the holiday season, and Watts was just a taskmaster. He would find them. He started finding all of them for showing up late. And to him, his late was 5 minutes early. If you weren't 5 minutes early, you were late and you were fine. So anyway, they have this big meeting, and the other thing was everybody was expected to stay for the entire show. You had to stay until the entire show was over, and then everybody left at the same time. And so they're having one of these meetings, and I can't remember who it was. It may have been Barry Windham. Foley raised his hand in the meeting and said, listen, I understand that, we have a rule that we all have to stay for the whole match, but, the holidays are coming up. We got a big storm coming through this weekend. Would it be okay if those of us that, when we get done with our matches, we go ahead and hit the road, since we've got Christmas coming up? And Bill Watts says, yeah, well, it's a tough business on families. All right, let's go.
Oh.
Wow.
Wow. All right.
What a dick.
Fucking asshole.
All right, let's go. That's a no.
Get your ass in the road.
You need to get in there and do some work. Muta was awesome, and I think could have been a big main event attraction at that time had they given the old college try. Well, it all worked out in the end. He had a great career in Japan, and WCW did fine, I suppose, and it all worked out. But it is fun to play what if, as JR might call it. On those.
But yeah, check out this match if you guys
sure.
haven't seen it. It's a cool 20-minute match maybe, but doesn't feel long at all. Really flies by. And again, even with the kind of non-finish, it works very well for the story that they're telling and that they get across very effectively.
It did feel like an appetizer for something that could have come later on paper.
Yeah, it kind of did.
Or in a clash or something.
I did have written down, Sullivan had one funny line on commentary when apparently JR is talking up like he has his own sort of version of the WCW hotline, I guess.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
And he's like, oh, well, you can call late at night, make sure you got your parents' permission, da-da-da. And Sullivan goes, I called it one time, JR, and I'll tell you, I was thrilled. And I was thrilled, and I was even more thrilled. And then I lost.
And then I lost interest.
JR
And JR says, I've heard that a few times.
Well, that's happened to me a time or two.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Apparently,
The commentary sometimes does bring it down, but then sometimes I remember it's Kevin Sullivan, and I don't care.
Kevin Sullivan is confusing a 900 number with WCW Hotline.
As you do.
Yeah.
Well, I try to give all my listeners that experience, quite frankly.
Oh, wow.
All right. So,
I just want to say, I loved working with Muta. I loved it. He would spit in my face. I'd say, hey, do it harder. I want more of it. Spit more. The more you spit, the better it gets. Anyway, but I'd take him out on the town, and he was handsome. The girls loved him. I had no problems with him. It wasn't like trying to go out with Gary Hart. Thanks, Rick.
Gross.
Rick's last match should have been against Muta.
I completely agree.
Damn.
I completely agree.
Shit.
He could have. Then Rick wouldn't have had to bleed.
For real.
Rick wouldn't have had to bleed. He just could have spit the red mist all over his face.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I like this match too. I didn't love it, but I liked it, and it just because I felt like they had more in them. But it was certainly what I loved about it is the fact that I didn't know it existed, and like you, Tim, I didn't think these two ever had a singles match on television against each other. So the fact that it even existed was phenomenal. So it just makes me angry that we didn't get any more than we did because that 2 minutes on pay-per-view really, like that don't even start on that Iron Man tournament, but nonetheless, it is a very good match nonetheless and a great TV match. And Flair shines in it as always in that era. And Muta is just fun to watch constantly. I'm not quite the biggest fan of the JTech shenanigans, but I feel like Gary Hart's one of those wrestling managers that I have to admit I've just never gotten. A lot of people love Gary Hart and put him in high esteem. I've never gotten it. I've never seen a Gary Hart promo where I'm like, boy, that was Bobby Heenan-esque or that was Jim Cornette-esque. Yeah. It's just, he's just kind of there, and I don't know. He doesn't do anything for me.
Agreed. I wondered why he was with Muta, and then I was like,
He's kind of like Great Value Paul Ellering to me.
Yes, that's a great comparison. Both bald.
Yeah, and just sort of like think they're like that manager that thinks they're more cerebral than they really are. Whereas like Paul Ellering can kind of pull that off, but at the same time it's like, all right, whatever, dude. But yeah, with Gary Hart, you just kind of want him to shut up.
Yes. Also, shout out to Chad Campbell because he's the one who showed me that match.
Yeah, thanks, Chad.
Oh, very
I would
cool.
not have known this match existed if not. So, good stuff.
Excellent. All right, so we got one more to send us home here, and I'll tell you, we pretty much wrapped up Muta's 89 run here in the promotion. He is back for a cup of coffee in 90, well, I guess more than a cup of coffee in 92, working some decent TV matches. Of course, he will win the WCW championship, from Shono.
Was that the NWA title or was that the WCW International?
I believe that was the NWA championship technically. And dropped that belt again. Sorry. He drops that belt to our last subject on last episode of Talking WCW, Barry Windham. Dropped it to Windham, kind of bummed around. And I guess 94, he's done for a good little bit after kind of decent pay-per-view outing with Steve Austin at
Spring Stampede.
Yeah, Spring Stampede.
Yep.
In 94. So we're not going to see too much of Muta again after that, although in the NWO era, the international expansion of this faction will take them to the land of the rising sun, where we will have now representing NWO Japan, former opponents, the Great Muta and Masahiro Chono. Yes, and representing the awesome NWO B team theme.
Amazing. No lie, when I watched this match like a week and a half ago when I was trying to come up with ideas for the show, and I watched this match, and that was the first thing that like stood out to me is, God dang, that music rules.
Yeah, it's they don't get the A team treatment from the NWO theme. They got the B team music, which is still great in its own right. Just lets you know where you stand in the pecking order. But these two in 1997 at the Bash at the Beach are going to be taking on the Steiner brothers. So, oh boy, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I'll freely admit I'm cheating a little bit with this match because it's far more of a Steiner brothers match than it is a NWO Japan or even
Tim,
Great Muta.
If you've learned nothing about me through this show, I am never going to complain about a Steiner Brothers match being added to the show, ever, no matter what the subject is.
Especially a Steiner's match beating up two Japanese opponents.
Yes.
Not that there's any prejudice in that, but they're real good. They're just real good.
Is it just me or the Steiners like even more huge than normal? Or maybe I just haven't seen them.
Oh, no.
They're real yoked.
Yeah, especially Scott. This was when Scott was about 1 year away from Big Papa Pump. So he's getting I don't want to cast any aspersions here. He's getting he's hitting the gym a lot more in this era.
Oh yeah.
And he's bulking up.
Yeah.
He's not quite
right. He's not exploding out of his skin yet, but he's about to be there. Like,
and importantly, he's not yet demanding somebody to give him the fucking mic. But that's coming.
And that's also, we're getting there here in 97. This summer, we start off with an awesome badass entrance. NWO Japan coming out again to the B team theme. Muta with his most striking outfit yet, if I do say so myself.
Yeah.
This massive skull helmet with horns and a serpent adorning his shoulders, almost like it's a scarf.
I could live without the snake, but
I love this. Well, it's more of a dragon, I think, than a snake. Although there's a fine line.
Lead the dragon
between the two. It's I love that.
How sweet is that NWO face paint?
NWO face paint. Oh my God, it's amazing. Yeah, it reminds me a lot of NWO Randy Savage, where you are sacrificing some of the Randy Savage like individuality by putting him in all black and white exclusively, but man, did he make that work and made it work for him. This is Muta kind of doing the same thing. So he looks like none other. Very, very striking here. But speaking of striking, it's NWO Japan off to a hot start. They be clubbering on the Steiners in the ring. They send them to the outside, but then foolishly play to the crowd with their backs turned to the Steiners. Who would do this? Because
foolishly?
the Steiners get right back in there, on the top rope, just waiting for their opponents to turn around, hit them with double clotheslines off the top. And that's our official start to the match. It's going to be Scott locking it up against Muta. And that story is really one of strength versus speed. We talked about how jacked out of his mind Scott Steiner is at this point, but Muta is still moving at a nice clip. I mean, I know people are saying, his knees are starting to go. He's not his old self anymore, but I mean, I wouldn't say 97 Muta is what we would consider over the hill just yet. Like
to me, he still moves like Muta at that point.
Yeah, he's still moving like himself. So Muta is able to fend Scott off with a series of kicks, but Scott quickly puts a stop to that with a huge double underhook powerbomb. I always love he does the delay before hitting it. follows that up with a gorilla press slam. Muta's like, fuck this, bails out of the ring. So both guys then tag out. We're going to reset here. Cause
I believe that's my favorite part of the match. It's the one thing that may be my favorite part of the match, where Muta rolls out of the ring and he stands there and he literally scratches his head like a lost child.
He really does. He's like,
I love it. He's like, huh? What have I got myself into here?
Before that we can shoot here. So we're going to go back to the match here with Chono and Rick Steiner. I mean, Chono can't get anything going either. But eventually he does gouge the eyes for the unfair advantage and puts the dog-faced gremlin down with a Mafia kick. It ain't got nothing to do with the Mafia. It should have been a Yakuza kick. But it's called a Mafia kick on commentary. Rick is going to come right back with he blocks, basically no-sells a Chono shoulder tackle, and hits that sweet twisting suplex that he does, catching the guy in midair. Just signature Rick Steiner offense. And we go right back to Scott and Muta now. So this is like the second time this match is just reset. Been pretty much all Steiners, with NWO Japan getting a couple of little hope spots here. Chono slips
and
in.
Just how beautiful are those suplexes, by the way?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're going to see a bevy of suples in this match before all is said and done. But Chono gets in the ring, cuts Scott off with an electric chair drop, and that finally allows Muta to take over. We get the handspring back elbow, a big, like, face crusher again. Just a real fundamental move that, when Muta does it, looks way cool. And then follows up with that snap elbow drop, all in really rapid succession here. The two NWO guys are setting up now for a double team maneuver. Not sure exactly what they're going for, but Scott mule kicks Muta and then dumps Chono with a top rope belly to belly. Again, not something you see a lot in 1997. Rick gets back in there, destroys both guys with Steiner lines, and then hits a pair of overhead belly to belly suplexes, goes up to the top rope, brings it down on Muta with that diving bulldog. Again, more of that just signature Steiner offense. Looks so cool. Scott then out of the corner hits a side belly to belly on Muta. Muta's just eating shit in this match. Goes to the middle rope, but Chono nails Scott from behind, and that allows Muta to capitalize with a top rope Frankensteiner. Looks really sick. Like you can tell he gets it in tight. Like it's not
amazing,
one of those loosey-goosey. I always hate when guys do this Frankensteiner, and like you could tell they barely get the legs around, and they kind of slip.
Yes, I saw one on I think it was on Dynamite a few weeks ago. One of the luchador wrestlers did one where he like ran and jumped over the top rope, but like he didn't even lock his legs at all. Like he just he rested his legs on the shoulder, and the opponent still did the front flip out of it. And I'm like, come on, man. Muta showed you how it's done. Ray showed you how it's done. Come on.
Exactly. Dragon screw leg whip to Rick Steiner from Great Muta. Another just move that such a basic thing that I love seeing when it's executed, with that snap, the way Muta does it. But then, Muta's gonna go to the well once too often here again, tries for that handspring back elbow. And then probably like my spot of the match here, Rick catches Muta around the waist before he can connect with the elbow, rotates, and then hits a sick German suplex out of the move. So great. So amidst all this chaos, Scott then whips Muta across the ring and catches him with a traditional Frankensteiner, Scott Steiner style Frankensteiner. Rick is apparently the legal man. I've kind of lost track of who's who at this point. And he goes for the pin, at Scott's urging, but Chono yanks Mickey J out of position for that pinfall. So the Steiners then absolutely destroy Muta with what can only be described as a doomsday DDT. Which seems like it would be disastrous. in even attempting, let alone execution, but comes off beautifully. Muta is absolutely dead, and Rick gets the pin. Shono has no answer for this. Absolutely.
Shono just stands there watching it.
Yeah.
He really does. It's great.
Maybe he's like, you know what? I'm tired of getting suplexed.
You know what? I've gotten dumped on my head one time too many. And I mean, they show the replay, this double decker DDT. You would think that would be business exposing, but if anything, in slow motion, it looks even better.
Mm-hmm.
Could not have been pulled off more brilliantly. And, an absolute dominant performance by the Steiners. I don't think they necessarily made these guys look like total jobbers, but,
no, because Muta got his offense in.
Mm-hmm.
he got some of his shit in, but you could be forgiven for thinking, boy, they just beat the shit out of these poor Japanese dudes who were just trying to, collect a paycheck.
Other than the Mafia kick, Chono did nothing in this match.
Yep.
No, Chono really didn't do anything. But I mean, I don't know. I kind of think that's par for the course. He plays his role very well as kind of the big stiff of this team.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, I'm not a big Shono aficionado. I've not seen a ton of his body of work, but what I have seen of his has always been pretty much this. That's his deal. But Muta's sort of. I know he gets the shit whipped out of him here, but he's sort of the glue that makes this thing work. If I can try to turn this into more of a Muta performance. He sells his ass off. He takes a lot of really stiff offense that many competitors would not be game for, certainly against the Steiners, given their reputation. But Muta's a pro, and we get a hell of a match. This is one I had kind of forgotten existed, but was reminded of, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a nice little dandy of a match on this pay-per-view.
Yeah.
So, I have to tell you, it was between this and a 92 WCW Saturday Night match, Muta versus Brad Armstrong, 2 out of 3 falls, which actually I know sounds absurd, but is kind of an interesting match.
Yeah, that's actually the match that made me pick Muta when we did the last show. I just watched it just for fun randomly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get on that.
Oh.
I'll address that in a moment. But yeah, no, so unrelated.
I couldn't in good conscience leave this on the table.
No, this match was so
when
good.
neither of y'all picked it, I was like, we've got to do this.
I was going to pick this match if I didn't pick the 89 one, because I watched this totally caught me off guard, by the way, because I don't remember this match at all. And I watched it the other night, like last weekend, and I was like, this is awesome. This is just, I've realized it. I've just realized it. We all, you know how your tastes change as you get older? Like when you're a kid, maybe you don't like apples, and you get older and you're like, hey, I like apples now or whatever. Well, not that I never disliked, I always liked the Steiners. I always liked the Steiners a lot. My favorite tag team as a kid was the Rockers. Now, in my old age, and through the process of doing our podcast, are the Steiner brothers my favorite tag team now of all time? I think they are. I just don't think there's any other, like, if my happy place in wrestling, I think if I just want to smile watching a wrestling match, I'll just put on a Steiners match against literally anyone. Except Dr. Death and Gordy. But, anyone else.
Anyone else who will eat suplexes for 15 minutes to an hour.
Yep. I can watch it all day long and never get sick of it.
Yeah.
It just brings such a big stupid grin to my face.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that, because I was going to say, usually in our picks, when we get to Tim's pick, I'm like, this is a Tim pick. I was going to say, this is a Greg pick.
This is a Greg pick. This is very much a Greg pick. If I had done the Brad match, that would have very much been a Tim pick. And I was real close to pulling the trigger on it, but I said, man, I ain't doing a fucking Brad Armstrong match when you get the Steiner brothers and NWO Japan out here. Come on now.
But yeah, and I had watched this earlier in the week for research too, and I had passed it because, like you said, it's more of a Steiners match, I think. But I liked how you framed it, because Muta was the heart, basically, because the Steiners are just animals, and you don't get a lot of emotion, anger. But, you don't, You don't like feel.
Anger is an emotion, technically.
Yeah, besides that. But if you want a real angry match, then the Steiners are the heart of that. But Muta held it together, and he just, but bless him. I felt bad. He still had that confidence that I like about him, and like y'all said, he still moves like Muta. But yeah, by the end, it was like, oh, this poor guy. Like, especially that finisher.
Yeah. Oh
that
my
was
God.
absolutely insane. But he took it like a champ too. Like, he just waited for somebody to come lay on him.
Yeah, I mean, who takes getting dropped on their head with more enthusiasm than a Japanese work rate guy in the 90s, right?
Yep.
And
Great point.
it's just no one is happier to get a CTE in a just basic tag team match than a Japanese wrestler in 1997.
And that's why the Steiners get off on it. That's what the
Right.
Steiners
and
are.
I feel like
they love wrestling the Japanese
the
guy.
only other time I've seen them do that finish was against another Japanese team, and I think it was a match that we talked about, wasn't it?
We did at Wrestle War '92 against Fujinami and Iizuka
and his young boy.
Yep, his young boy, and the poor young boy got the piss beat out of him in that match.
Yes, he did. And if you're in the ring with the Steiners and you're going to be stepping off those Frankensteiners and they look like that, then you're probably going to get your ass beat.
At least Muta had the courtesy to call it a Frankensteiner, not like Mike Tenay calling it the Hurricane Rana.
Hurricane Rana, yeah.
It's a Frankensteiner. You call it a Hurricane Rana again, you're not going to like it.
And he keeps that snap, that we like throughout the whole match, like even in the desperation elbow that he throws towards the end,
Yep.
It still had that good impact to it. But yeah, it's fun. I'll tell you what,
Now, is there a lot of selling going on in this match? No,
there's no.
Do I care? No, not a bit.
And why did Chono distract the ref at the end? I was very confused by that.
Well, he was breaking up a pin because I think it was Scott who hit the Frankensteiner on Muta even before the big finish. So he already had the match won, and it was that pin that Chono was breaking up. But then they just took Muta into the corner and did that Tuesday DDT for good measure. And, I don't know where Chono was out to lunch while they were setting up for that.
Fucking with the ref. I'm like, what
but
are
he
you
was
doing
still,
there?
I guess he was still getting chastised by old Mickey J.
Yep.
But
and then once he saw the cover happening, he was just frozen in fear.
He was just done. Yeah.
He saw that move on Muta. He's like,
he saw that move and said, "I don't want none of that."
Nope.
Is NWO Japan really worth this?
Right. I saved my guy once, and that was a mistake. So
I ain't dying at the Steiner's hands.
No, I ain't dying for this match.
This was just so fun. This was so fun.
Really is.
I allowed myself to be brainwashed at one point in the late '90s, early 2000s by Scott Keith talking about how bad the Steiners were by this point, and they weren't. They were still the Steiners.
They're still awesome.
Oh yeah,
they were still able to suplex people and have fun. I mean, we did that fire and ice match.
Messy, but yeah.
Yeah, we did that fire and ice match from '96 or whatever, and I'm like, I think in the original review he did for it, Scott Keith always buried it, so I always thought, oh, that match must have sucked, and then I watched it. That match is awesome. That match is amazing. Anyway, the Steiners are great. But Muta is definitely what makes this match work because, again, like I mentioned earlier, Chono does next to nothing in this entire match. Yeah. So Muta is the one that's having to take the vast majority of the bumps. He's the one that's doing all the offense for them except for the Mafia kick. He's the one that the crowd kind of knows who he is, and he has that interesting way of moving and all that. I'm not knocking Chono necessarily. I guess I am in a little way, but I'm sure Chono had a lot of great matches and stuff in Japan, but his American stuff never really stood out to me at all. But
that's not it.
But Muta, quite the opposite. Muta just jumps off the screen, and he did have some believable offense. That Frankensteiner off the top rope, a thing of beauty, just fantastic. So I'm so glad you picked this, Tim. I loved the match when I came across it. It took me completely off guard because I wouldn't have expected it to be that good. And not the best necessarily Muta showcase, but I still think he put in a great performance in the context of getting dumped on his head repeatedly.
God bless him.
Agreed. So, do we want to talk any honorable mentions?
Oh yes, absolutely. This I mentioned that the Tim's match was one of my almost. The Brad Armstrong match is actually what started my Muta fascination recently, because I was just to pass the time on like a random weekday. I put on the 1992 WCW Saturday nights when they had switched to a studio. It's very weird. They switched to a studio talk show format interspersed with wrestling matches. And anyhow, every main event was 2 out of 3 falls. We've done the Steve Austin and Barry Windham match on this very show. It was 2 out of 3 falls, one of them anyway. Anyway, Muta and Brad Armstrong have a main event, and I still don't understand the point of it, because Muta didn't come in, to my knowledge, Tim, for a big run in '92 at that point. This is early '92.
Right. This was
Brad,
like in like May.
April or May
is when it was taped, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't know why they had the match, but they have the match, and the crowd knows who Muta is. They're into Muta. They're obviously Brad Armstrong had some fans there as well, and they have Brad's an incredible technician, and it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, which is one of the reasons I didn't pick it for the show, because I didn't necessarily know if you guys would be in the mood to watch it's about almost a 30-minute match, right? It's a pretty damn long.
It's long.
Match.
Yeah, it's it's at least 25 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. So and it's a lot of mat wrestling, a lot of chain wrestling, a lot of headlocks and arm bars and hammer locks and all that stuff. I liked it though. I mean, I will acknowledge that it probably doesn't get into the same gear that you would expect from a Brad Armstrong and Great Muta match, but I do think they work really hard. They're sweating their butts off in this match, and it's also the wrestling itself looks tight, looks good. I really enjoyed the mat sequences, the clever finishes for the falls. It's 2 straight falls, but they're done in a very cool fashion, like I think. So, I really actually enjoyed the match a lot, and I would recommend if you're somebody who's got patience and you're a fan of mat wrestling, I would recommend giving it a shot. It is on Peacock, and I think it's a good match. Did you like it, Tim?
Yeah, pretty much echoing your same thoughts. It's what I think of as a like a wrestler's wrestling match, if that makes any sense. I think like if you're a journeyman wrestler, or even if you're kind of maybe new to the profession and you're still learning the ropes, like this is the type of match they would maybe show you and be like, this is a real just how you work a match and sustain interest for an extended period of time. This is not just a quick 5-minute in and out TV match. This goes over 25 minutes, 2 falls, and yet they're not doing anything too flashy. It is very mat based, very technical, but it's not a lot of rest holds. Nothing really overstays its welcome, so it doesn't wear on you. It doesn't feel boring where you're sitting there going, oh my God, not another chin lock, not another sleeper.
Right.
Oh, back to the face lock. There's not a lot of that nonsense. It's just,
and they're working for the holds. Yeah.
They're working every hold, pretty much for the entirety of the match. And it's sort of one of those, it can be frustrating because they never really get out of second gear, which you're hoping and expecting in this type of match. And it kind of just doesn't happen. It's sort of paced the same way throughout the entirety, with a couple of little quick, like do-si-do type exchanges where they're whipping across the ring, and then they settle back into whatever they were doing on the mat, kind of thing. So that's not going to be to all taste, but again, I don't think it's as boring as some of those just rest hold city shitty matches you see from guys who are clearly just trying to stall and kill time or catch their breath. These guys don't need to
the
catch
Coliseum
their breath.
video exclusive match.
The Coliseum video exclusive, the dark match from In Your House, whatever. Like, these guys they've got the cardio. They do not need to catch their breath. They know what they're doing out there. Yeah, I think it's a very believable, in the context of professional wrestling, type of match. So not to all taste, but if you're kind of down for something a little bit different, potentially a little bit challenging, I would say check it out. Again, I thought I was going to pick the match, so I do have extensive notes on it, but that is what it is. And apparently the date was the air date. So on the network, on Peacock, it will say May 30th, 1992. I'm sure it was taped much, much earlier than that. So,
well,
yeah.
as you know, it's a tough business on family, so they got to do a lot of taping.
Yes.
I
watched the Austin match from Spring Stampede '94.
Yeah.
And I watched a tag match with Vampiro from 2000.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Was that Muta and Vampiro versus Sting and somebody?
Yes. Yes?
Yeah, that was
remember. It wasn't very impressive. No, it was the other guys. The they got like the same names. I don't know, some team.
Insane Clown Posse?
Brian Adams.
Chronic. Brian Adams and Brian Clark. Yeah.
Oh God.
Pulled that out of my ass. But and then like the Havoc '89 match.
Yeah, Thunderdome.
Mm-hmm.
The Thunderdome.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, surprisingly, like I don't know, it's like a hodgepodge of things.
That sure is.
A Danny hodgepodge.
I wondered. I definitely did wonder if anyone dipped into the Dark Carnival era of Great Muta in 99 and 2000. It
wasn't the best.
No.
It's a lot of really short matches is what it is. Which is probably for the best. But
I remember them hyping up for Nitro one time in 2000. Sting versus the Great Muta for the first time on WCW television in I can't remember what they said, since 1991. So it'd been almost a decade since they'd wrestled on television. I was so hyped because that was one of my favorite childhood rivalries. I was in high school at the time, and I remember tuning in. That was a rare night when I was going to watch Nitro live because I wanted to see that match. And the match started, it lasts 2 minutes, and they do some sort of DQ with Vampiro running in and blood falling from the ceiling and all kinds of shit. And I was so mad. I was so mad that night. But
that's a process of staying mad watching those 2000 Nitros.
Yeah. I had another few honorable mention matches that I very strongly considered, both tag matches. One was from the clash that took place between Bash '89 and Havoc '89. And it was the J-Tex of Dirty Dick Slater, one of the great nicknames in wrestling. Dirty Dick Slater and the Great Muta versus Sting and Ric Flair. This match is awesome.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's nothing but action the whole way through. Just balls to the wall action. Flair and Sting beating the hell out of the heels. The heels getting good heat on both Flair and Sting at different times. Ric Flair is just a madman in this match. He's so mad at Terry Funk, and of course it's just a great match, honestly. They hit each other hard. Sting and Muta do all the athletic stuff. Slater and Flair hit each other harder than humans should hit each other. And it's just wonderful to watch. The ending, of course, is famous with Terry Funk coming out and wrapping a plastic bag around Ric Flair's face, trying to smother him.
Oh, right.
It's just incredible chaos. Part of me wishes I'd picked it, but I love the match I did pick. But this match, you have to go. If you're curious about the Great Muta, you need to watch this tag match. It's just awesome. And then the other tag match is from '92, from Starrcade '92, a show in which Great Muta works 3 times on the show. Mm-hmm. And this is part of Battle Bowl, the Urethral Lottery.
Yeah.
Previous
subject of this podcast.
Yes. And in which Brian Pillman and Too Cold Scorpio team up against Barry Windham, who is a frequent topic on our show, and the Great Muta. And boy, you want to talk about a crowd. Of all the shows we talked about, this is the hottest Muta crowd, because that crowd is chanting for Muta the entire time. Every time he does anything, they explode. And it's an awesome match. Like not awesome might be pushing it, but it's a very good match. And, it's again, a showcase for Muta. Wyndham and Pillman do good work. Too Cold does all of his flying stuff that he gets in. Muta is just sensational though. And he gets this huge pop for the moonsault that he wins with. And, it's a fun time at the office. And, I would also recommend that. It's not quite as good as the Flair and Slater match, but I would very strongly recommend folks to check this out too. It's a little bit of a hidden gem on a much maligned show that is Starrcade 92. It's probably, if not the second, then the third best match on that card. Obviously, you got Sting and Vader on that card, which is amazing. And then there might have been one other match that was good, and there's some just absolute clunkers, one of which involved Muta on that show. So
there's so much battle bullshit on that show that it's tough. But that is one of the rare, decent Battle Bowl tag matches. Urethral lottery tag matches, I guess I should say.
Correct. Yes.
Not to be confused with the Battle Royal.
Yes. Battle Bell.
I will say that I feel like Muta is one of the ones that I always enjoy like the like watching part of picking these matches, but I think his is like near the top of everybody that we've done, just because I'd never really been exposed to him. So a lot of it was super brand new for me, and just another chance to like fall in love with another wrestler. And so it was a great pick. Like, I really appreciate this pick.
Oh, awesome. Thanks. I'm glad.
Always love when that happens.
Me too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I was hoping that would happen because it's just that, I think a lot of times Muta, a lot of modern fans don't really know much about him anyway, but then like, I feel like his WCW run gets maligned a little bit unfairly because people are like, oh, Muta was lazy when he wrestled in America and all this crap. And I'm like, no, he was playing a character, and he played that character very, very well, and left an impression on a generation of kids, I can say for sure, because I was one of them, that like you remember the Great Muta in a way that you don't remember Fujinami or some of the other guys that would come over from New Japan, because they were just wrestlers. They were good wrestlers, but they were just wrestlers. Muta was more than a wrestler. He was a superhero, really, or a supervillain, depending on how you look at it.
All right.
Excellent.
I think it's my turn.
Yes. Well, it's not Greg's because this was his episode, and it's not mine because I had last one.
All right. There's two that I'm really struggling to choose from, and I was really leaning towards one.
Is it the Booty Man?
No, he was my third, but
Is it Nick Patrick?
Oh God! If I will quit the show if one of you ever picks Nick Patrick. So, but I want to do something different, because we've been doing a lot of like single wrestlers here for a minute. So I want to do Halloween Havoc matches.
Oh, okay. All Halloween Havoc matches.
We're coming into fall, so I figure it might be timely.
It gives us time in case we don't have our shit together and the show is late.
Right? See?
Very good.
Not that would ever happen to us.
No.
Right.
And
so even if it is in September when it drops, that's still, as far as I'm concerned, Halloween season starts in mid-August. So
agreed. So, and we might could get some quirky stuff. And some real themed matches.
There are some certainly quirky matches in Halloween Havoc history.
Sure.
Chamber of Horrors, Thunderdome, the Hulk Hogan killing the Giant by throwing him off the top of a building.
Spoilers.
Yes, discussed previously on this podcast.
Yeah.
The mummy gyrating against Hulk Hogan.
Yes. I love it.
The Yeti, I should say.
The Yeti.
There's all kinds of unique things in Halloween Havoc history.
Yeah, so have fun researching that one too. Greg, you got any podcasts going on?
No podcast. But what I do have is a Twitter account where people can go and read my tweets about things. It is at GPhillips8652. GPhillips8652. I mostly talk on there about wrestling these days, but occasionally other things will seep in. Sometimes I'll see a pun that I like and I'll retweet it, and then sometimes I'll see something that I won't understand and I'll retweet that too, because I want to sound smart and seem cool to people. So
wow, good admission.
Yeah, sometimes I'll do that, and then other times I do nothing at all. So, which is appropriate for my real life. So, it's really a good microcosm of who I am as a person. So, go to that Twitter website and find my little thing there that I mentioned. As I often say, I have Facebook, but you're not welcome there if I don't know you. And what else do I have going on? Nothing of note. No wrestling shows planned soon to attend. I've exhausted my wrestling budget probably for the year. I bought an Adam Cole shirt at an AEW show back earlier in the year, and I had a bad experience with it though, because I bought the shirt and I've never had this experience with an AEW shirt ever, except until this one. It shrunk to a degree that I've never seen a grown adult shirt shrink to.
Oh, no. The Adam Cole effect.
Yeah, exactly.
Line
of the show. Line of the show right there.
They infused the shirt with Adam Cole.
Yes, with Bebe chromosomes.
God damn it. I was not expecting that. Oh, that was good. That was a good one. Oh, man. So it shrunk and I got fatter, which is a bad combination.
Yeah.
So anyways, if anybody has a properly fitted 2X Adam Cole shirt they want to send to me in the mail, I'll take it. But
that they've never watched.
Yeah.
Because it can't be watched.
Other than that, I got nothing. So.
Jim, I know you got podcasts.
Yeah, I've got some podcasts. I do another wrestling podcast. I do that with you, Jenny, and our friend Jacob Williams. It's called PTV NXT, and you can find it right here on Place B Nation Wrestling. So that's normally a monthly or semi-monthly, or not semi-monthly, bi-monthly, if you will, podcast. We try to keep it monthly, but, again, we don't always have our shit together. But anyway, chronicling NXT from the network era, that is 2014 through, the start of I'll say NXT 2.0 for the sake of argument.
Nice.
But we're still in the very early goings, of the year 2015. So, I guess not too early. Our last episode was on, the takeover, right?
It was?
I believe so. At the time that you're hearing this, anyway. But anyway, just check that out if you're an NXT fan. Again, here on Place B Nation Wrestling, we have an affiliate podcast network called the North-South Connection, where I don't really have much of a regular presence these days. However, I do have a spin-off show that started on the North-South Connection. It is called 9021 No-So, a chronological rewatch of the original Beverly Hills 90210. That's me and JT Rosero and a rotating guest each time out. That has its own podcast feed. So all you have to do in your preferred podcatcher app, search 9021 No-So, and you will find it and subscribe. And that's the only show you'll get there. Makes it very easy. So we're enjoying that. We've started just recently season 2 of 90210. As of this recording, you can look for very soon, episode 3 of season 2, 90210 with our guest, who I will not reveal. You will tune in and find out. You can also follow me on Twitter. I am at Syke68, CYKE68 on the Twitter machine, where I'm not super active, but perhaps I will be one day again. Jenny,
yes,
anything
perhaps.
I'm forgetting?
I don't
Perhaps.
think so. I think you covered it all. As for me, I am every Wednesday on the North-South Connection with the Jenny Physician. So that's a couple of different shows. You heard about Pluto The newest one is an episode with Chad Campbell where we watched Jeopardy, so that was fun.
I love it.
And then for Gal Drive-In, my newest one of that features Jake Williams, where we watched Child's Play, a very, very good horror movie. If you haven't seen it in a minute, it's on Amazon Prime. And it holds up. It's really good. And also have the Extreme Three-Way Dance on the North-South Connection, going through the history of ECW, and we are almost to Barely Legal. The first, I don't know, big thing that they do, although they've done big things for 3 years. So, listen to that.
I'll never forget Paul E's commercial voice for advertising that pay-per-view before it came out, because they bought advertising time on Raw, and you'd see the commercial and he'd be like, I can't remember the exact verbiage, but it'd be something like, there are going to be things that happen on this show that are so controversial, they're barely legal.
It's a pretty good Heyman you got there.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. And he was excellent on the, because we just covered the invasion of Raw when they came on and had some matches.
Yeah.
And he was on commentary with Vince and King, and it was epic. He was insanely good on that, so I enjoyed that. Anyway, I could talk for 800 years about ECW, so I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm on Twitter at Jenny Position, and thank you for listening, and we will see you next time for Halloween Havoc.